Terry, I have an important question for you.
I dig.
Did you like that?
I really did. I
The
like the
tone.
back.
I feel like the tones just flow through my fingers and out of my soul. I was fiddling with that one for a little bit before we started, which I usually don't. I usually just have it locked in hours before.
I want to ask you like a whole episode one time about like what your preparation is for playing the intro
I
because
think
I'm
that's a great idea, and we can do one on my entire artistic aesthetic vibe, not related to the actual conversing or how I feel like podcasting. That's not my
I like
question.
that.
That's not my question today, though.
Okay.
I noticed you're wearing a hat that has some camouflage on it.
Bought this
How,
hat in Spain.
how do you feel about the outdoors?
Ah. Um
Honestly, I thought this would be a faster answer. Like I thought you'd have it ready.
well, yeah, well I should have based on what you told me to what we were talking
No,
about.
not because I prepped you for it, but because like Terry, how do you feel about baseball?
you so I've gotten to the place where I don't want to give the reflexive answer. I love
Oh,
it.
this is an intentional pause.
It's an intentional pause. Yeah.
Do
How
you know
do I
what
feel
you know?
about
What
the
you,
out? Go
well,
ahead.
you need a rhetorical device. Like people say, oh, that's a great question, but you need a different one because that one's overused. So
I hate that. Yeah.
you need the equivalent of that's a great question that just buys you a little bit of time and lets everybody know you're thinking about it. Ooh,
Nope.
what about let me think?
I like the Elon. There's a clip of Elon Musk. I've mentioned this before. I think
Yeah.
he's doing a CNBC. By the way, this is like vintage you and me. We're supposed to be talking about the thing, and here we go, like roosters that have been
I'm
set
gonna hold your
free.
feet to the fire.
Okay, but let me tell you the Elon Musk story
Yeah,
because
please.
this is what I like. He's doing a CNBC interview, and whoever the reporter is asks him about the financial impacts on X of
Mm-hmm.
his shoot from the hip speaking thing style. And he sat there for a minute, literally for a minute, and came in with an anecdote about the Princess Bride, and it was some quote to the effect of "Give me power, give me money, I don't care." And
Wow.
so I like the pause for effect. I feel like, and this is a big thing for me that I kind of incorporate sometimes, but I don't really. I feel like I want to be comfortable in silence and conversation, and I'm not always. And I don't think I feel like there's a need now. Granted, on a podcast, there is a need to fill silence with conversation, but I want to be comfortable not having to talk. So anyway, that's my thing. Is if I get a question where I want to think about the answer, I'm just going to pause.
No, pausing is fantastic, and it's a thing that so there's a conditioning to be able to answer quickly, and I think that conditioning is counterproductive
I agree.
because it misses the opportunity to think the answer through. And most people would prefer a well thought through answer than you to think as you speak.
Well, I have a when you ask me what I think of the outdoors, I have a reflexive response. Oh, I love it. I don't get to spend enough time in it.
No.
You know,
See, I don't think that's as obvious as it is to you because you could be like, oh man, the bugs and the sweat, I can't stand it.
that's part of it. But I have a the I feel like the success of my life, a bunch of things, but one of the big contributors to the success of my life, I grew up in rural farm wooded Indiana, and I had hours upon hours of unsupervised exploration in the woods, in a forest, all the time, and in springs and streams and outdoors. I didn't think about the bugs or the sweat or any of that stuff then. So there's a bittersweet nostalgia, mostly a sweet, but a nostalgia to the outdoors that I have from associations to that time period. There's also the intellectual position today of, I think we're losing things. Again, quantify it, you can't, but I think we're losing an essence of our being as humanity, by not being more in touch with being outdoors and not experiencing the sounds and the smells and the energies and all the things that come with the outdoors. So at the same time, yeah, I don't want to go. I don't want to go roll around in mosquitoes and wasps and snakes and all that. So that's the answer.
Do you feel like there's an infinite universe just outside your door?
I think there's an infinite universe inside our own bodies. I think, let alone the outdoors. I
given the
think
given the choice of staring intently into an anthill or staring intently into a microscope focused at your own skin, which would you pick?
probably the anthill.
I would pick the skin if I had if I had a microscope that could keep going more and more layers deep. I'd pick the skin, and I'm imagining first it's skin, and then it's the whatever's underneath your skin, and then some muscle, and then pretty soon I'm at the bone, and then I'm inside the bone where the blood vessels are, or sorry, where the blood, what are they called? Blood cells. Blood cells are getting made, and I'm just picturing like down, down, down. It just keeps going deeper.
Yeah.
In that kind of, but that's slightly unfair because I used an imaginary microscope here.
If I could see the movement, I'd rather see the skin. I want to see the movement, and I'd probably get to see the movement in an anthill. If I could watch the blood go through the vessel
Yeah.
and, like, meiosis, we all have seen the cellular division under a microscope. If I could watch all that stuff happen, of course the skin.
What about the sky? Do you often look at the sky
Hmm.
just to stare?
There's a shade of blue in on cool days and in the winter, and I don't know why it is, but there's a shade of blue that the sky gets when the temperature is cool, the humidity is very low, and it's clear. There's a shade of blue that the sky is that I can't stop staring at. It's the most beautiful shade, and yeah, there are a lot of interesting things for me. I mean, truth be told, I could stare at the carpet, and if my mind is, you know, doing other things while I'm staring at the carpet, then the carpet's fascinating. But the skies, there are a lot of interesting observations to make if you look.
This was the actual point of the question. I mean, I, I don't know that I have a strong take on the outdoors. I find that the romanticization of the outdoors, a Robert Frost poem or a book about, I don't know, like imagine the book that is the personification of Terry's childhood, traipsing across the across the farms to a tire swing and then through a creek and, you know, getting a snag on a barbed wire fence.
Which
That's what
I've
I'm
done.
imagining. Yeah.
I've done.
Who hasn't?
Yeah.
Who hasn't? But I don't, I don't think I actually have a real life version of that kind of outside that I spend any time in. Like I don't pursue the outdoors. I don't have a bumper sticker that says the
Mm,
mountains are calling and I must go.
yeah. How about Salt Life? I love those bumper stickers. Ah,
I recently I live in some place where it's about 2 to 3 hours to the beach and about 2 to 3 hours to pretty good mountains. So I've got the mountains are calling and I must go. I've got Salt Life. They're all kind of mixed together. But I get the impression there's something that feels more authentically outdoorsy to the mountains and the woods than Salt Life, in the sense that maybe I'm just going to the wrong beach areas or saltwater areas, but I feel like even when you're in nature in the Salt Life, it's often for the sake of, fishing, which is essentially like a feeding and commercial activity. I'm not, I don't have a stick and a hook. I have like a rig and a four wheeler that I'm deflating the tires to get onto the fishing beach, and a cooler and like all this accoutrement that has to come with me for my fishing trip. I mean, I don't literally fish, but I like go on the pier. I go on the pier where people are fishing. Seen some sharks. That was cool. But that it has the trappings of outdoors light in that environment, in the sense that I can easily drive there. I can park a car. It's handicap accessible usually. I'm not headed for the wilderness basically ever. How wilderness was the places that you were running around growing up?
Oh, well, I mean, you had your choice. The woods, as we called it, the forest that was directly behind my house was fairly small. There was no way to get lost in that. But just down the street was a pretty expansive forest. Um, that, yeah, I've been lost a time or two, and it never scared. It it would be different at night, I think. I've never been like out west. That's an expansive forest, or the Appalachians have any mountain range like that has an expansive forest. So I've never been in that environment, outside of like the commercial application of that, so like trails or whatever. I've never been just free range roaming through a big expansive wilderness. That might be a little
Do you think
overwhelming.
it's proximity? Well, like you have to be the right age. You have to have the right level of interest. You have the right level of free time, the right level of not having other interests pulling you to go wander out in the woods or up and down a mountain. I mean,
What
there's a personality thing too, but I do feel, it feels phasey.
That's what I want to get into. What is the personality of the person that has the wilderness is calling and does it?
Are you talking about the ones that buy the bumper sticker, or the ones who are just living it,
Well,
or both?
both. Yeah, both.
I think a lot of people don't like people. They want to be by themselves and hear the sounds of nature. And in the United States, you don't have to go that far to be pretty darn alone.
What
Few
do you
exceptions.
what do you think about, there's the concept of earthing or grounding, which is just basically common sense, I feel like, but there are levels of that say there are certain energy fields in a forest that people are drawn to, and that we lose touch on that, and it affects polarity of cells and that sort of thing. I clearly am not an expert on this and don't claim to be, so could be woo, could be whatever, but that's a non-trivial field in research.
I would say that I occasionally stomp through some woods. They tend not to be remote, and I have a healthy mix of, you know, what are the risks of these woods versus what's the reward of the woods. So I can get the reward of woods without going very far. For me, staring at a rock covered in lichen and moss, like it would be nice if I don't hear stuff. You know what I mean? Like I don't want to hear humanity while I'm staring into a moss covered rock. And not having other people on the trail, and ideally the illusion that I'm deep into the wilderness. That's nice. But I mean, I don't know if anybody who doesn't at least like spending a little bit of time contemplating nature deeply. I think there are two schools. They're the people that are able to sort of quiet themselves internally and be in nature. And this isn't necessarily the woods. This could be a mountain. This could be the woods. This could be the desert. This could be on a kayak. This could be at the beach. Like take your pick. But being in a unpopulated or less populated or more remote area and communing with nature. If you can't get your if you literally physically cannot rip yourself away from your phone and are photographing and live tweeting your experience in the woods and taking selfies for the sake of selfies, like nothing is going to calm you down and nothing is going to get you out of that. And I don't really relate to that. If I'm in nature communing with nature, I want to be in nature communing with nature. And I don't mind taking two trips, take the selfie trip, take the photo trip, also take the commune with nature trip. I don't know. I I don't think I'm outdoorsy, but
You
I grew up seeking nature out. and now
You,
I basically don't.
you always just like scatter 7 or 8 thoughts that need explored independently on their own, and it drives me crazy because I'm like, okay, that's one. There's another one. There's another one. You
Should
mentioned
I
at the
stop?
very
I can focus.
no,
I don't
no,
know
you
if it's
should.
helpful or unhelpful.
It's good. You mentioned in the beginning of that the concept of risk reward, and
Yeah.
this is no joke, no joke. My position with things like the forest, activity X in nature, is there's a non-trivial chance if I go wandering off in the woods by myself, the overwhelming probability is that I'll have a good time and be in nature. But there's a non trivial chance that I'll be a bear's lunch or bitten by a snake or something like that. And to me, that's not appealing to do routinely.
Well, I feel like the more you do it, the less it feels like a risk. Maybe the less of a risk it is. This is the difference between a woodsman and a city slicker
Yeah.
like ourselves.
I am not a city slicker. There's an intentionality to this. I can do that stuff because
Are you a suburban slicker? Suburb slicker?
I'm a, I guess city slicker by default. I don't know.
I have a stupid question related to this. I'm trying to paint a mind picture of Terry's time outside, meaning now. So you go outside every day. You're basically never not going to go outside, right?
Not as much as I want, but yes.
I count you are not under four walls and a roof. You are out of the doors
Mm.
every day. And
Oh, for sure.
it's more than like walk to the car in the driveway.
For sure.
Yeah. And you run outside
Right.
pretty much every day. Do you have a treadmill?
I don't, but I work out at the Y, which is literally 2 minutes from it's in my neighborhood.
So even to get to the Y, you got to go outside. And since it's so close and in your neighborhood, you might as well walk over there, right?
But I don't.
I see. I see. How long would it take you to walk there?
5 minutes.
Would it feel like nature while you were on your way there?
No.
And when you go for a run at any point during your run in the outdoors, does it feel like nature or does it feel like a subdivision or
Yeah.
something
It
like a
feels
subdivision?
well, I've got like a tenth of a mile stretch that is on a paved path
Mm-hmm.
through a field
Yeah.
around the neighborhood
The
that goes
the
by.
picture's filling in. It's good.
Yeah, it goes by a pond where flocks of geese like to be year round, and there's a farm to the right where cows will on occasion get out and they will greet me in the field. So yes, there's about a tenth of a mile stretch of my 2 mile run that is feels like it's in nature.
You ever run in a big city like the concrete jungle?
Oh yeah.
How do you
So
feel about that?
when I go to wherever I go, like
Yeah.
especially when I would go to cities frequently for work, like New Orleans. The first 3 times I went to New Orleans, I would stay by the convention center. If you've been to New Orleans, you understand where that is. And then that's not far at all from the quarter, from Bourbon Street. So I would strap my phone on and go run through that downtown area. For me, it's a way to see the city. Did the same thing in Vegas. I've done that in New York. I've done that in a lot of places. New York, a little less so, but I do that in cities. I go run in the thing that you're supposed to go be touristy in, but I
Go run
run
there.
there in off hours so I can see what the thing is without having to fight people.
You get to see more when you're running than if you're walking.
Exactly right.
I know
Yeah.
I learned my way around the area that I live in now, like my directions and oh, there's that thing over there. Running, biking, biking to the train, and
By the
this
way,
was the way that I yeah
that part of the city that you're in
yeah
Virginia,
yeah.
there's a part of that city that is amazing. It's beautiful. Like in the same way that, but in a more historic sense than my neighborhood, but in that it's been gentrified a little bit or a lot, but it still has like that old world vibe. And there's the temple, the hotel that we stayed at. Um,
Oh yeah yeah.
there's a big temple right across the street from that hotel. That entire area was really impressive.
So in the Washingtonian magazine and the Northern Virginia magazine, these are two real magazines that are basically still in print. I don't know how that works, that they are successful as print magazines in 2024. They have pretty wide circulation, and every year they do where do you want to live polls and basically rank what's the best place, and where you are staying is always number one choice.
I see
It's
why.
like this is the place to be.
I
So
see
yeah,
why.
it makes sense.
We were there for 3 days, I think, and got out and about. You were kind enough to show us around the Capitol in a cool way. But we spent a lot of time just kind of roaming around that area too. That temple, I don't remember what the religion was, but it's beautiful. Was it
None.
Mormon?
It's Masons.
Masons. That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. No, we can't even know what it's about because Masons. It's a great sledding hill. We got snow today. There were people all over that. I don't live down there at this point. I live pretty far from there, but I appreciate the compliments you're paying to my regional
Yeah.
to my regional neighbors.
Yeah.
I live in a I wouldn't say it's grittier. I live in a mix of a more bland post-war tract housing neighborhood that's sandwiched between a pair of state highways, both of which are not really gentrified. Yeah.
Sandwiched between a pair of state highways. I thought you were going to say something like a colonial outpost neighborhood or something like that. It's two
No, man,
state
the place I
highways.
still live inside the Beltway, but where I live was considered way out there for a lot of the Washington D.C.'s history.
Do you ever look around? Does it ever? You've been in it for so long, you probably don't. But do you ever look around at the history that you're surrounded by?
Yeah, like my wife found the handwritten, scanned in uh, meeting minutes from I guess it was the HOA or the community association for our subdivision that went in and I guess started going in 1950 or 1952 or something like that. And like I'll be honest with you, the part that stuck out to me was by 1955 ish, there were complaints from the neighborhood in the form of letters to the editor of the very local newspaper about teenagers leaving their trash in the parkland area and in the streets. And I'm like, oh, so it's been 75 years and nothing's changed
Changed.
at all.
Yeah.
We just have an online version of that. It's Facebook groups or Nextdoor where the same people 75 years later are complaining about the same things.
I always like to give compliments, and you are responsible in the time that we've been doing this for probably one of the bigger evolutions of my life, in that things are as they always have been. And that is, it's easy to say because it sounds right that things are worse now, or the kids, the thing back then was better because it's out of memory. I mean, we do that with presidents, and I know this in my lifetime, presidents that were clearly hated, um, clearly hated.
Yeah.
They seem to, you know, grow. There's a fondness that encircles them as they go, you know, in history, as they're
Ronald
historical.
Reagan won a CNN greatest American poll,
People
but it was
hated him.
well, I mean, this said more about what was happening not that long after Ronald Reagan died among CNN watchers and poll respondents
Yeah.
than it did about who the actual greatest American was.
Yeah, but I think that's amusing to me that your meeting minutes of your HOA had letters to, or that there are complaints to the editor of teenagers leaving their trash in the park.
I mean, so it's duality is an important concept here too. Two seemingly opposite things can simultaneously be true. So as much as everything is the same and things are as they have always been, and I'm not saying this to contradict the compliment you just paid me. I'm just saying uh, the same. Sarah was talking about the sociological, and that stuck out at me, but there was also there was a long stretch where the infrastructure of the neighborhood was being improved. So there were no sidewalks. There were, discussions about where the sidewalk would go. There were community input on, do we want sidewalks on both sides of the street? Do we want sidewalks everywhere? Like, is it going to make the road too narrow if we have sidewalks on two sides of the street? And this is stuff that I've taken for granted, as assumed that there were curbs, sidewalks, storm drains in the neighborhood the whole time the neighborhood existed. No, it was road with no sidewalk, no storm drain. Apparently, at the beginning of the neighborhood, there was no pavement, so it was all just dirt roads in the neighborhood. And this was 75 years ago, but it was not like that long ago. But the roads were paved slowly, and so that stuff was all. It was fascinating to read about. You would put in a subdivision that was intended to be middle class housing, and like, you don't have a paved road for it. But then by the same
Yeah.
token, to go back the other side to how things are always, things are the same, people are the same. There were complaints about, oh well, we need to put a curb in that little stretch of parkway where there's a grass berm down the middle of the avenue, because people are just parking their cars in the grass berm. And I'm like, if you didn't have a curb in that grass berm, there would be cars parked there right now.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's fascinating to see, like, the behaviors are the same, the infrastructure is different, like, but it's both cycles, and it's some stuff can be exactly the same, and some stuff is completely not the same at all. Including but not limited to, the public hearings are just handwritten notes. That's, can you even imagine the difference between that versus video recording of two random people across the internet? Like, that's so different.
But see, this is the thing for me. This is what I crave. This is I like order. I like order. I like, because I like science and math. I like that there's a direct evolution from X to Y, and there are similarities between society then and society now. I think people are largely the same, but like, what has changed? Like, what has evolved? What has grown, and why? Like, what has been the reason for it? Like, all of those, the questions, were those people more respectful, or was it just that the Overton window of respect has changed? Were those people less intellectual, or is it just that the Overton window? I'm fascinated by these discussions because it's not linearly the same. Things are different. How and why? Like, what's the order of what was then and what is now?
I mean, I can't give you. I wouldn't say there's a practical application to this necessarily, but you've made me think a lot more about history than I otherwise would have. Like, I generally don't care about history, or at least I don't think I care about history. But then when faced with things like, we don't go outside like we used to, I'm like, shoot, maybe we don't.
We don't.
How would I find out? How would I know? How would I make some sort of meaningful conclusion about this? And then I'm faced with, wow, like, nobody actually knows. This is just a thing that we don't know. And I'm not saying this exact example necessarily. Maybe there's a way to quantify whether we go outside more than we used to. But man, it's not easy. And it would take non-trivial amounts of time to go figure out, did we used to go outside more? And to be able to defend that scientifically,
Yeah.
as this was a thing that we used to do and now we don't. You know what we used to do a lot more? Smoke.
Okay, so I knew this was coming. There is a surgeon
Uh-huh.
on Twitter
Yeah.
advocating for smoking.
Today?
Today, today. Like, I was waiting for it too. I've laughed about it because there's such a bent towards the good old days when people were smaller, and
I
people
don't think people know as much. That I'm not sure when people think about the good old days, and people, when you say smaller, are you talking about less fat?
the BMI was less. Yeah, it
Okay,
was
so the
like
BMI
thinner.
was less, but people were also smaller. But 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 I think that in general, there's not a firm grasp on the fact that being a bigger human being is strongly correlated with being a healthier human being over time, over the long run. So tiny little classic human versus today human, the nutrition, the lifestyle, like so many things are indications of us being healthier, which then all ties to longer lifespans now. Anyway,
So yeah, this just these are all the questions that we could just talk about all day long. Origins, linear transformations, why things are the way they are now. Um, do is there do you miss something from not being more connected to the woods or not being connected to your land? Is there something missed by urbanization and the specialization that comes along with that?
maybe we talk about our feelings about the city next time. I mean, I asked a simple question: how do you feel about the outdoors? And now I'm having an existential crisis, which seems pretty normal.
That's about how we do
It
it,
seems
right?
basically completely normal. I
Yeah.
mean, so I mean, I think that the you spend time outside, as do I. Neither of us seek the outdoors in a bumper sticker esque manner. We both had a lot of outdoorsiness as kids. It's unclear whether we associate the outdoors with freedom and choice and autonomy and independence and learning and growing. It's unclear the extent to which we've abandoned the outdoors because it was a phase, or because we're just modern men living a modern life, or something else. But I think we can both clearly see worlds inside inside a blade of grass, and maybe that's the point. And maybe the point is I don't want to actually explore questions about how did we used to be. I want to go lay down face down in a field and stare at that blade of grass in front of my nose and just do that for 15 minutes and then get up and go about the rest of my day.
And maybe that's the thing.
Maybe
Maybe
that's
that's the thing
maybe
at the outdoors.
the
Maybe
thing.
that's what they did. Maybe that's the thing is you're not trying to quantify some scientific experiment. Just go feel the grass, just go see the whatever. Maybe that's it.
Just hear the words of Terry Miller. Just go see the whatever. Maybe that's it.
Yeah. Do the thing.
That's better.
Yeah.
Thanks for the sound bite. Till next time.
Till next time.
Till next time. Next time. Next time. Next time.